Welcome everyone to Touchstone Center for Crafts. We are currently in the ceramic studio with Meg Burke. She's going to be doing a demonstration for us tonight. We're just doing a quick sneak peek of her work. All these pieces have been wood fired. They have a very distinctive surface. This is our ceramic studio. And here's Meg Burke. Meg, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on?
So, my name is Meghan Burke. This is my 4th season at Touchstone. I was the tech for the past 2 years here, so this year I'm lucky enough to be back as an intern again. And tonight I'm going to be making ceramic jars. So this is an example of the jars that I make. So I'll show you how we make the galley and the walls and the bottoms and everything. And I went to school for ceramics. I graduated from St. Joseph's University in 2015, and then throughout residencies and my travels ended up finding Touchstone, which I was very lucky enough to find. And here I am for another season. So I'll show you how we start the jars. I roll out slabs for a lot of my work. So I roll out a big slab and I measure out a 2.5 by 7 rectangle, and I'll cut it out. And then I end up folding it. A lot of times I'll let it rest and I'll make multiples at once. So I end up folding it, and then I cross the ends and meet them together and kind of overlap it. And then I blend it together. So I'm making a cylinder that I end up blending on the inside and the outside. And I try and push a little bit more where it overlaps so that you don't get a big thick wall at that point. If you don't, then a lot of times you'll get this weird uneven bump after you pinch out your form. So I blend this out, and it's nice and smooth and almost even throughout. And then once I have that shape and it's together, I start pinching. And when you pinch, the clay really moves with the force you have. So I'm pushing outwards as I'm pinching my hands together. And that helps bring this clay outwards to make a bigger shape, because I'm ultimately making it the size of the jar that you saw before. And I go fairly thin with pinching. What I'm focusing on is how even the walls are and the pinches. So if I find a big uneven spot, I'll pinch that out so it is even with the rest of the walls. And once I get about halfway done or down, I'll flip it over and start from the middle up. And I'm still kind of pinching, I'm pushing down and then bringing it out while I pinch. And you could do this, you could push it inwards if you wanted to pinch it in and have it cinch in. Pinching is really something everybody can do, and it's also a really accessible way of getting to know how clay moves in your hands and how it wants to move. And I work on a banding wheel. This is what this is called. It's called the banding wheel. So I don't have to keep picking up my pots. I can just keep rolling with my pinches, and it's just an easier way for me to work, and it's a lot faster than having to pick my pots up while I pinch, since I work in the round so much. So then once I get it pinched out, I start to focus more on the shape. And since I want it tapered at the top and wider at the bottom, I'll start to flare out the bottom by just pinching it. And then I make sure I'll go in and make sure that the walls are nice and straight. And once I get the form that I want, carefully flip it over. So this would be the bottom, this would be the top. And I want to set this aside before I make the bottom, because I want the bottom set up, or I want this wall set up enough so that it won't bend and move while I add the bottom. So over here, I have one that's been set up, so if I hold it to the side, it's not going to sink and warp like this one would. See how that one sags and this one's nice? So for when I'm adding the bottom, I want something stable for when I manipulate it. So I have these cookie cutters. You can actually find any kind of cookie cutter, but they're all just different size circles. So I measure the bottom, and this is a good size. So I'm going to cut this out. Peel this up, and then I'm going to compress the bottom and kind of widen it out a little bit more. And this kind of makes the bottom stronger and more secure, and then it also gives me a little extra more lip because I'm going to end up pushing and pinching the bottom to make this ruffle. So I'm going in a circular motion and just trying to compress and stretch that clay out just to make it a little wider. And then I end up flipping it over, and I'll do the same thing to this side. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to go in and smooth out the edges. So when I smooth out the edges, this will allow the pinch to just be a little bit more cleaner and look nicer once I pinch it on the pot. Make sure it's not stuck. So now I'm going to score and slip. I'm taking my serrated rib and scoring the bottom, and then the bottom edge of my pinched wall. Then I'm going to go in with my brush, make sure it's nice and wet. On both sides. Do another little score. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it over, put it on the bottom, and then I'm wiggling where it meets the edge so that I know it's nice and secure. And a lot of times I'll pick it up and give it a little pat so I know that it's not going anywhere. And I'm pushing from the inside and the outside with even pressure so that I don't end up manipulating the shape too much. And once I see a nice seal like that, I'll go in on the inside with a wet, stiff brush and just clean up that edge. And make sure that seam is nice and blended in, the score marks are gone, so it looks like a seamless bottom. And I'll end up doing that a couple times throughout the process just to make sure that it's nice and neat. And then from this point, since I have the bottom, I flip it on its side and I'm going to start making that added pinch. And I'm going to go in with kind of a dry finger just to get rid of this really sharp edge, and that helps make those pinches a little more smooth and cohesive, and then I don't get, sometimes you'll get weird cracking with pinches, or it just doesn't move the way you want it to. I don't get like a nice even pinch, so that's why I like to smooth the bottom. And then I always use, when I'm pinching these ruffles or whatever you want to call them, I make sure my fingers are dry because that's the best way to get the clay to move. So I'm going from the edge and pinching upwards, and that adds that extra look on the bottom. And I'll do this all the way around. This also adds another level of security with adding a slab bottom. I know that it's on there fairly well because of the extra clay that I just pinched on the bottom. So then after that, you have your bottom shape. And if it gets a little messed up, you just go in and pinch it back to how you want your shape again. Push that bottom out a little bit more. So at this point, you have a nice bottom pot of your jar. I'm going to go in again and just fix that bottom. So now we need to make the lid. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to just add it in the comment part. And Stacy will read me questions. Alright, so now that I have the bottom, I'm going to make the top. And with that, I'm looking also about the size that I want, because I'm going to end up doing the same thing, compressing it, and using the rib to do the same thing to the top. So I use my cookie cutter, cut that out. I'm going to put this to the side for now. And then I like to take either a plaster mold or a bisque mold, a slump mold, something that has a slight curve and dome on it, because I like to have that slightly curved top. And then I'm going to go in with my rib and really stretch and compress this top. And I'm moving in a circle so that it evenly moves together, so I don't have a crazy wonky top. I like these silicone ribs because then it's nice and smooth after. And then I end up adding a little pinch look. And since it's a slab, I just go and press the top just so it's cohesive with what my bottom looks like. It's like a faux pinch. Once I have that, I'll go in again and smooth these edges. And now I use with the wet finger. And now I'm going to make the top pinched aspect. That kind of looks like a flower. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with the dry finger again, and I'm really like starting back a little bit more from the edge, and then I go and compress and like move the clay forward to make that first ruffle, and then I'll go in again around, and I just keep pinching and moving the clay to make these ruffles. Sometimes if I'm making a really big lid, I'll go space it so I don't run into some problems, but thankfully with these small lids, it pretty much matches up with the size of my finger.
What kind of clay are you working with?
So this is a high fire stoneware, I work primarily in like gray or light stonewares, and all high fire for the most part because I wood fire my work, and that needs to go to at least code 10. Right, so then once I have this lid, I also like to let this set up and kind of stay on this mold so that when I add the galley and the handle, it doesn't just want to slump and sag on me. So I put this aside. Take my handle, or my lidded one already. And from here, I don't have any galley on it or lid, so I'm going to take more cookie cutters, which are really great for hand builders. This helps me make this helps make jars possible for me. Otherwise, I'd be rolling out a coil and trying to make a cohesive, even galley with a coil, which is not as easy as doing it with the cookie cutters. Try. It's hard. So I take another slab, and this time I'm going to use 2 cookie cutters and make a little ring. And I try and get it, obviously, as even as possible because I want it as even as possible. Put this aside. Nice. I love when that happens. So I'll take the ring I just made, make sure it's centered, or as centered as I can get it, on my pot. So from here, I'm just lining it up, and then I'll end up marking where it needs to go. I work on foam when I need to make sure the lid stays a little domed. I don't want it to flatten while I'm working, so I'll end up pushing on the foam instead. And from here, I'm going to score and slip again and attach. Yeah. And all my work is hand built and pinched and coiled, so I've tried to find or learn tricks from other hand builders to kind of make the process go a little faster than having to start from a pinch pot, and that's why I work from slabs. And it's just kind of gets me able to make more of a production. Otherwise, I'd probably kill my hands and end up making like 2 pots a day. Not really. So I'm going in and pressing and wiggling and really compressing those edges. And at the same time, I'm kind of pinching and tapering this top edge.
Where can people buy your work?
So right now I have a website in the works, and I will post on my Instagram as soon as it's published, and that will be able to, you can buy online. Right now I'm selling at, well, before COVID I was selling at booths and in person, but feel free if you see anything you like while I'm posting on my Instagram here, hit me up on my Instagram and I'm happy to send you a pot. I have PayPal, so that's always possible. And soon on the Touchstone website, on their gallery, I will be having some pots for sale as well at the Touchstone gallery.
That'll be during our Touchstone open house on September 26th. So make sure to check out our website for more information about that as well.
We will also be unloading the wood kiln on that day as well. So I will be at the wood kiln unloading pots that I've been making for the past 6 weeks, and I'm very excited.
And that's also going to be live streamed, the unloading of the wood kiln. So check that out as well.
So I'm going in with the brush again, and this just helps clean up that line and that seam, and it makes sure that it's nice and sealed. And I'll do the same thing with the outside, and then use my finger. So at that point, this can sit and set up, but for demo's sake, I'm going to pop it on the jar, like so, and then we can make a lid. And I don't like making reclaim, so I usually end up all my wet scraps just get squeezed up to use for coils, because I end up coiling things and making things all the time. So a lot of my extra clay just stays wet, and then I end up making it out of something, or making something out of these coils, so I don't have to dry my clay out and reclaim it. It's just an extra step that I avoid.
We do have a question from the comments.
Yes.
What are you working on top of?
On top of this is, so under here, the spinning thing is called a banding wheel, and it's kind of like a lazy Susan for pots. And this helps me work in the round without having to pick my pots up. And then underneath it, this is a small vat that's plastic, but I taped some newspaper on top of it because it helps the clay and what I'm working with not stick. Since the vat is plastic, the clay wants to really stick to it, and then I'd have to manipulate my pieces to peel it up, or ultimately ruin my pieces if it was really stuck. So I work with the newspaper so that I can just pick it up and don't have to worry about it getting stuck. And I'm going to make a little pinched handle, I think. So I'm going to take a little extra clay off. It's kind of big. I like to kind of put the size that I start with on the pot to make sure that it wouldn't be too big. And it just gives me an idea of where to go from and if it needs to be bigger or smaller. And right now I start with a smooth surface, and then I don't really have to go back in after I pinch them to clean it up, because that does take away from some of the details. And a lot of times in my pots you can actually see my fingerprints, and I like that about my pinched pots. You get to see the process and my actual hand. Okay, so I'll work on this. So I'm gonna make like a flared pinch. I'm going to start in the middle and pinch upwards, and I flip it over just because my thumb and my index finger are different sizes. I want to make sure it's nice and even. Okay. And then from here, there's a little bit of cracking. This is what I was talking about with the cracking of the pinches. But you can just go in there. I go in there with the wet finger, and then I just blend that out. score it. First I'll make sure it's centered on the pot. And this is also why banding wheels are nice. I can just keep going in a circle and center it that way. Score and slip. Attach it on. And this is why you want a nice set up lid. Because when I push it and wiggle it, I don't want it to warp and change shape. And once that's secure, go in with a tiny little coil. We'll seal that attachment with this coil. And this just adds kind of an extra safety. So there's less of a chance for it to crack during the firing. And so you don't see that seam.
How often do you wood fire?
So if it was a regular Touchstone season, we have community firings that I'm able to be a part of and I help out in. This year we will hopefully be doing 2 wood firings, but I like to stock up work for at least 1 wood firing and make as much as I can so that I'm set for in the winter months, because right now Touchstone's kiln is the kiln I fire out of, and in the winter we don't fire, so I try and get as much work out of it as possible. And then once it's all seamed and done and blended, we have a lid, and that's how you make a jar. Stuck.
Very cool. Thank you, Meg, so much for the demo.
Thanks for coming. Hope you had fun.
Be sure to check out her Instagram at Meghan Burke Studio. We'll just give you a little quick see of her pots. There's some beautiful colors in here. If you see anything you like or are interested, reach her on her Instagram at Meghan Burke Studio. And next week you can join us at 7 p.m. the same time on Tuesday. Join us on Tuesday at 7 p.m. next week for another ceramic demo. That'll be by Julia. And also check out our website for more information on our open house. We are now having a virtual online open house on September 26th, and there will be more information on our website about that as well. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.